Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Debategate here at the High Stakes Sports Debates Network. My name is Tom Jude. I am your host, and I am joined by a very special guest today, the editor of Rebel Media out in California, Mr. Lars Lewis. Lars, how are you, my friend?
Hello, Tom. It's good to hear from you, and I got to say, you've done a really great job so far with these videos. It's definitely helped out my fantasy teams quite a bit.
Haha, thanks, dude. I really appreciate that, man. So yeah, today's debate topic, as you can see by the title in the video. Also, real quick, if you haven't found Rebel Media on Twitter, on Facebook, go ahead and find them. They've got great work. I happen to write for them too, so I can personally attest to it. Also, Lars Lewis can be found on Twitter at LarsLewis12. So go ahead and follow him for great insight on all the four major sports. As you can see by the topic of today's video, is a PPR running back and a serviceable wide receiver 2 worth a solid running back 1 in fantasy? This is a question that a lot of people have. A lot of people deal with it throughout the year because trading is a thing, folks. People trade in fantasy and people are looking for the best possible value that they can get. So, Mr. Lewis, I'll kick off the debate with you. This was your idea, this was your topic, and I think it's a very interesting one to say the least. How do you feel about trading away a solid, steady, consistent running back 1 for a pass-catching running back and a wide receiver 2?
Well, if you think about it, I actually had this experience myself personally, no more than last week. Remember the game with Seattle when Marshawn Lynch ran free against the Niners? He had about 120-some yards. He had a touchdown. He had a big day.
Yeah.
Something sprung me. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking, okay, he's had a hamstring issue throughout the season. He just had his big game against a lowly team. I'm looking at my wide receiver core. It's really weak. Right. I definitely need some compensation. So I looked at the league actually that we're in, at the WBNY Blitz League, and I actually, funny enough, got an offer. So someone actually kind of read my mind in proposing a trade. I had a guy send me Giovanni Bernard, running back for the Bengals, and Martavis Bryant from the Steelers.
Right.
For Marshawn Lynch. Now, you think about it. Marshawn Lynch was my number 1 pick in the draft this year.
Right. Where were you picking?
The guy has been spectacular the last 5 or 6 seasons. Number 1.
Were you number 1 overall?
I was number 1 overall in the draft.
Wow, okay. Which,
in a 16-team league, which is unheard of for most leagues, that's a big gamble.
Yeah, it is.
You got to wait 31 times to get another one.
Right. No,
I chose
agree with you.
Marshawn because, AP didn't play most of last year, so I didn't know if I could trust him or not. I had to take Marshawn.
Right.
I got kind of burned, and the guy jumped on him because he had a big day against San Francisco.
Right.
I'm like, bingo. I finally can give myself a wide receiver that can help my points because it's a PPR league. PPR league wide receivers have a far bigger role than in standard leagues.
Right. No, most definitely. So they're highly valued.
He gives me you give me Gio Bernard, who is used primarily as a pass catching running back in the Marvin Lewis offense. And then you have Martavis Bryant, who came back. Now Ben Roethlisberger is there. Now that Le'Veon Bell's done for the season, Bryant's role just got even bigger.
Oh, absolutely. He's definitely their main touchdown threat.
I took the deal. I sent away my number 1 overall pick. Yeah,
right.
I sent away my number 1 overall pick, Marshawn Lynch, an elite RB1, for a pass-catching RB2 in Gio, and then a WR2 in Martavis Bryant.
Right.
Because we all know the 1 is Brown. But Martavius is going to get a lot of catches himself.
A lot of catches. He's the main red zone target now.
This.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, he's huge.
Yeah, he's 6'4", runs a sub 4.5 40. You can't catch him. You can't guard him because he's so big. I think in your perspective, I think you got talented guys. Now, I want to talk about a trade real quick that was made in that same league. And honest to God, I had to question the kid's intelligence. I'm really sorry if you're watching out there. how can I endorse a trade that features Adrian Peterson for Lance Dunbar and Kenny Britt? I mean, what kind of trade is that? I understand that Lance Dunbar in a PPR, he was killing it. I had a couple 20-point games, but the guy looks like a matchstick out there. He's thinner than a toothpick. You knew that the probability of a guy like Lance Dunbar getting crushed over a freaking cyborg like Adrian Peterson, the dude was made by Dr. Giroux himself, okay? We knew that the injury risk was more likely for a guy like Lance Dunbar. And Kenny Britt, I mean, where the hell has he been? He's been locked in a cell this entire year. He had one big game, one big catch against Kenny Britt, or against the Pittsburgh secondary, which, let's face it, is a joke. Their front seven can ball, but who's out there guarding passers or pass catchers? I have no idea. Okay, you got Nick Foles under center, who we've seen now that outside of Chip Kelly's system is a joke. Okay? You're telling me that you're going to trade Adrian Peterson away, arguably the best running back in the NFL, for a couple of scrubs? I mean, what do you think, Lars?
Mind you, Tom, that guy is 0-8 right now.
Right, he is.
And I think it was a case of one certain guy taking advantage of a guy that may not know a great deal about fantasy football.
Right.
Now, that's a very different RB2, WR2 for RB1 deal. The one that I just had is a legitimate decision because you got two productive guys in Bryant and Gio Bernard.
Right. Kenny Britt's a wide receiver 76. Not a 2, not a 3, hell, not even a 4.
Bryant's a 2.
Bryant's a legitimate 2, right. And that's why I think ultimately you did make a good trade, because we know that with running backs, they fall off a cliff instantly. I mean, you could blink your eyes and the production stops from a running back. You know Gio Bernard's going to get his in the passing game. You know Martavis Bryant. In my personal opinion, I think he has the opportunity to develop into a 1. But right now, he's a 2 in a high-octane offense. We know that this kid is the focal point of their red zone presence, trying to get this kid the ball. And like you said, Lars, with Le'Veon Bell's season over, they're going to look for Martavis Bryant to pick up the slack. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I think that if you are faced with a decision where you have a running back 1, say you have Marshawn Lynch right now.
Right.
I think he had 22 carries and I think 70-some yards.
Right.
A rather pedestrian day. He's had really one good game all season. If someone is willing to trade you a PPR heavy back, say a Deion Lewis.
Oh my God, he's an RB1 right now.
Yeah, he's an elite RB1 right now if you're in a PPR format.
Right.
I mean, just last week in Yahoo League, for PPR, he had 23 points.
Heck, in standard, he's a 2.
Yeah. And then Gio, he didn't have that good of a game against Pittsburgh because when you're playing against the Steelers, you got to use a physical run game, which is why they ran Hill a lot more than they did Gio.
Right, but Marshawn didn't exactly light the world on fire either last week.
Yeah, and I think that if someone's willing to offer you that kind of trade, take it. Because
Let me ask
if you're in a spot, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Finish what you were saying, and then I want to ask you a question.
Yeah, if you're in a spot where you need wideouts bad, for me, I had it bad. My best wideout was Michael Crabtree at this point.
Yeah.
So I was desperate. I needed something.
Let me ask you this: do you trade Todd Gurley away for, let's say, a Danny Woodhead and a Jordan Matthews? That type of receiver? Again, same type of PPR running back, PPR receiver, wide receiver 2-ish for an elite running back 1. Because, again, Gurley's younger and stuff, but we still consider Marshawn to be an RB1. So I think it all depends on the trade. I mean, would you trade Gurley away for a Woodhead? Or let me rephrase the question. Would you make that same trade you just did, except with instead of trading away Marshawn, you're trading away Todd Gurley?
I still would.
You still do
I still would in the fact that you're going to get more points out of those two guys combined than you would out of that one.
Right.
So it all depends on the situation. If you're good at wideout, then keep Gurley because the guy's running like a madman.
Yeah.
But if you're thin at wideout and you need a wide receiver too, which obviously in a PPR league you do, then I say you still take the trade because the running back doesn't normally catch the ball.
Right.
And in the St. Louis offense, I don't think I've seen Gurley catch the ball very often out of the backfield.
Not very often. He's generally a 2 to 3 catch
guy. Guys like
guy
Gio
a game.
Bernard, guys like and Danny Woodhead. These guys are made for leagues like this.
Right. And that's why I think PPR is more valuable because if you don't get Lacy, if you don't get Charles, if you don't get Forte, it's like, oh shit, my season's over. But at least, in PPR formats, there's value in a what's his face, in an Amir Abdullah or a Gio Bernard, a Danny Woodhead. Heck, before Lance Dunbar was hurt, he was a PPR RB too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's value in other guys. And I agree with you. I agree and I disagree with you. I wouldn't make that trade for Todd Gurley just because I think, like you said, Gurley's a madman, and there's nobody else on that team who's getting the football. But again, obviously it depends on your situation. In the league we're talking about, we're in a 16-man, 3 wide receiver league.
Yeah, you're going really
your
deep.
wide receiver 3, honestly, could legitimately be a 3 on an NFL team. So I could see in that perspective, if 14, 12, 10-man formats, though, there's no way in heck I do that trade. I'm keeping Todd Gurley, and I'm riding him out this entire season. I can't endorse trading him. Marshawn's a different case, though, because Marshawn Lynch is 29 years old, and he's basically a walking hammy injury.
And not to mention, Seattle's offense is sputtering this year. They've had little to no momentum at all. If you look at last year, as a matter of fact, this is a funny thing. I was nervous on taking Lynch, but I was more concerned about AP coming back than I was with Lynch not having Max Unger at center.
Right.
That offensive line has completely changed from last season.
It's horrible.
It's terrible. I mean, poor Russell Wilson's been getting killed back there all year.
He's the highest sack quarterback in the NFL. And people wonder why they can't get this offense going. And he's got legs, right? Yeah. Right. So
that's why I think that maybe this is not exactly all on Lynch, nor is it all on Wilson for his struggles. Right. I think it's the Seahawks management for realizing that they didn't need Jimmy Graham.
They didn't.
What they needed was that offensive line that moves that ball. The offensive line moves for Seattle.
Right.
Jimmy Graham doesn't even block. He just goes out in the field, just tries to get open.
Right, and they were using him primarily as a blocker, all the off-season reports. Heck, even some of the in-season reports, you talk about him, how he's blocking so much, how this is not how I play, this is not my forte. Jimmy Graham is not a blocker. He's a guy you want to get down the field, let him use his size to box you out in the red zone. Heck, even in between the 20s, he physically dominates his opposition.
Yeah. And Russell hasn't been able to find him very much.
Right. I also think that's a product of coaching, scheming. I mean, Jimmy Graham's a transcendent talent. You would think a guy like that would be able to get open. And I think Wilson's is a good enough quarterback to get this guy the football. There's got to be something going on with the offensive coaching staff.
And I think it all starts with the line.
Right.
The line.
Right. Definitely.
The line makes or breaks an offense. We've seen that with every team.
There's
a reason why New England's been so successful for so many years.
Because they protect
that
Brady.
Offensive line is a stone wall. You can't get through it.
They protect Brady. Most
That's
definitely.
Right.
So that was our episode for today, folks. I just want to thank Lars Lewis for coming on the show. We'd love to have you more. You were great insight. And again, I think that this was a very interesting topic because it could help you win fantasy leagues. Todd Gurley you might not want to trade, but Marshawn Lynch. Heck, Eddie Lacy's at a point right now. He's a brand name. Maybe you go out there, you shop him, you say, let me get a Chris Johnson and, a serviceable wide receiver too. Maybe
like
a John Brown, a Jarvis
Landry.
Landry. Maybe, a Stevie Johnson or a Julian Edelman, somebody like that who's really going to come into the fold.
And also another quick one, when he comes back, I think Cecil Shorts is going to have an impact.
Yeah, we saw what Nate Washington just did this past weekend. So.
Yeah.
So go ahead and check out Lars Lewis at Rebel Media. If you haven't liked them on Facebook, if you haven't followed them on Twitter, go ahead and do so now. Otherwise, you're not doing life right. Go ahead and find the podcast in the link below. We do your start sit advice and your streams is on the podcast. Also, next episode of Destination Dynasty, we're going to talk about trading and how that's supposed to better your team. Also, keep it locked in for Fantasy First coming at you later this week. We're going to talk more in-season trades. Time to get ready for the playoffs. So we'll talk about all that and more. Thank you guys so much for watching the show. This was Debategate here at the High Stakes Sports Debates Network. For Lars Lewis, I'm Tom Jude. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and we'll see you here next time. High Stakes Sports Debates.